Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name's Owen. Hi, Melissa. Welcome. Glad to have
Hi,
you with us.
thank you for
Uh, yeah, so we're excited for our second Car Talk series, and today we're going to be talking about tariffs, and I think a topic that's probably very top of mind for a lot of us right now, with the various announcements and news this week. But excited for you all to join. We're going to go through a few critical topics. And very excited to have Melissa with us. Melissa joined retail earlier last year. She has several decades of experience in trade compliance, ocean logistics, and import, and she's one of retail's top experts on this topic. So we're very excited and privileged to have her with us. We're going to go through the current landscape, a little bit of the history of what's happened in the past, just to ground us. We're going to talk through kind of where we're seeing impact, and then looking ahead, what types of things we're seeing that folks are doing, and would encourage you to put questions in, and we'll look at those as we go through. And then I also want to just guide everyone that we're here to talk about what we're seeing, what's happening. We're not going to provide you specific guidance on specific HTS codes or actions or how you're managing. If you are managing imports, we would ask you to work with your trade compliance teams, legal counsel, and otherwise on that as we go through. But we're excited to engage. So with that, let's just jump right in. First thing, Melissa, we'd just love to understand how things shifted the last few months. What changes have been most significant for ecom? Could you just walk us through kind of what the history is and what we're looking at to get us grounded in reality of today?
Yeah, of course. So, as everyone has seen, I'm sure the global trade war has escalated significantly with the Trump administration. In the first term, tariffs were imposed on thousands of products valued at an estimated of 380 billion in 2018 and 2019. In March of 2018, there was the Section 232 implementation of 25% tariffs imposed on steel and 10% on aluminum. Following that announcement, there were further announcements specific to China. So in July 2018, 25% tariffs were imposed. August, additional 25%. And then in September, an additional 10%, all ranging on different commodities on China goods. Then we kind of saw that there weren't any major shifts under the Biden administration, and kind of coming forward, looking at President Trump's second term. So we know that he signed an executive order on January 20th, instructing his staff to provide recommendations on tariffs. Since then, we've seen many new implementations. February 1st, Trump imposed 10% blanket tariff on all imports from China. March 4th, Trump increased the tariffs on Chinese goods by 10% and imposed 25% tariff on goods from Canada and Mexico. Effective March 12th, tariff on steel imports increased to 25%, and aluminum tariffs increased from 10 to 25%. Additionally, all previous trade agreements for aluminum and steel became invalid. No new exclusions will be granted. The current ones do remain valid until expiration. And then the newest announcement on April 2nd, which is where he announced a 10% baseline for tariffs across all countries, which is set to take effect April 5th, and additional reciprocal tariffs on the countries with which the United States has the largest trade deficits, which is set to take effect on April 9th. Canada and Mexico were excluded from this announcement. So some of the largest impacted countries we saw with this announcement include China, of course. There's an additional 34% tariffs on goods. Their EU at 20%, a lot of the Southeast Asia countries, so Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand. And then finally, effective May 2nd, de minimis for China and Hong Kong will end.
Got it. Wow. Lots of things happening.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing all that and giving us just again, and I'm sure we've all been reading it in the news and digesting from different sources, but wanted to just ground us really quickly in that. Maybe let's jump into the specifics. How does this actually matter? How is this impacting cost structures? How is this impacting brands, suppliers?
Yeah, so tariffs imposed on imported goods obviously can can impact any business, especially commerce businesses, very highly. There are four specific areas I'd call out here. One being higher input costs. So tariffs increase the cost of imported goods, profit margin compression, price increases for consumers, and then supply chain disruption. So you have to kind of look at all of these separately and analyze them. In terms of profit margin compression, I'd say businesses would need to absorb these increased costs, leading to reduced profit margins, or they have to decide to pass them on to consumers. It's really a decision that has to be made. Price increases for consumers to offset higher costs. Businesses may want to look at raising prices, impacting consumer demand and sales. And then supply chain disruption. So we can see that now. Tariffs can disrupt the global supply chains. We expect to see delays. We expect to see disruption in services, impacting inventory, order fulfillment, on-time arrivals.
Yeah, lots of different pieces. What would you know, I know there's been on again, off again elements with Mexico and Canada. And certainly, there's probably some folks that are like, hey, it's hard to plan here. Do you have a viewpoint on folks that are either just saying, hey, like, I'm just going to do nothing because it's just going to hope it goes away? Or, curious how you might talk to folks like that.
So I think the strategy a business takes is very dependent on their business, where they're buying their products from, what their commodity is, what the impact of the tariffs are. So across the board, I think everybody's looking at sourcing adjustments, market diversification. I think everyone is reevaluating where they're buying product from, although I do feel this last round of tariffs makes that even more difficult, as there's really no country left untouched, and Southeast Asia.
Right. If someone moved their supply chain out of China to another country, and then now that country is facing, tariff changes, that
Right.
can be
Exactly.
take the wind out of your sails, certainly.
Yes. Pricing strategies, I know businesses are looking at different ways of pricing, different ways to remain competitive, different promotions, discounts, logistics and fulfillment. So, supply chains trying to optimize their logistics and save on cost where they can, create more efficient supply chains. And then obviously you always have to consider the end consumer and making sure that you're supplying the consumers with what they want when they want it.
Right. I think what I'm hearing is that if I'm sitting here saying, hey, I just hope this is all going to go away, I'm not going to do anything, it's a bit of a dramatic, it's a risky strategy to deploy. It's a risky hope to place. At the same time, to kind of also present some kind of internal doomsday scenario of, everything is just only going to keep kind of going up and up or changing, is also probably hard to plan for as well. But essentially, we need to be rational, expect that we're likely operating in a higher tariff environment for at least the next season of time, whether we consider that, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, et cetera, and make sure we're optimizing our business for that window and to compete the best. Thank you very much. Yeah, one thing, curious to pivot a little bit. Let's talk about some more practical tips for folks that are trying to navigate these items. Yeah, if you'd want to speak to some thoughts there.
Yeah, so I mentioned before the sourcing adjustments and market diversification. So on the sourcing adjustments, one thing that has really been on everyone's mind, even back when the first set of 301 tariffs were applied, was how can they shift sourcing to other areas where they would get the benefit of lower duties and tariffs. So ideally, the switch was happening over to Southeast Asia, specifically Vietnam, and we saw a ton of factories moving to Vietnam, Chinese factories specifically. And now with the latest announcement, you have to take even more consideration with where you're moving your factories, right? Because Vietnam now being tariffed at the 46% is going to create issues or inefficiencies with continuing moving. So I'd say that still needs to be top of mind. Market diversification, looking at the products you're bringing in and maybe looking at other types of products that you could bring in that would not be as impacted. Streamlining visibility. So I'd say this is really important if you haven't done it already. You want to create tools that will help you quickly work through any rapid tariff changes or trade agreement changes so that you can easily assess impact and pivot quickly. And then strategize implementation of complex programs. So there's, of course, lots of talk on different ways to bring in product, different Incoterms, first sale, all of these different methods in which shippers can look at to try to mitigate some of the costs.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think with a lot of our partners, what we're seeing is that those that are winning are those that are really working to drive out any and all costs. Now is not a time to have a fluffed up operations execution or supply chain. That means if, let's say you're bringing product into a domestic facility only to transfer it to a different facility, that's not a very efficient method. That's going to have extra shipping costs and human touches, et cetera, and damage rates. So how can you cut that one facility out and go right to your endpoint? One thing I've also heard and seen is that I think folks are just saying, well, this is impacting everybody. We'll all just raise price and it'll be fine. But that's absolutely not what we're seeing at retail. Here, this chart shows you we tested a bunch of SKUs. We raised their price only 1% to 3%. And we saw 20% reduction in velocity from that. And so I think for us to just hope that the consumer can just it is probably like, us all self-reflecting on ourselves. If we were to go to the store and buy something that used to cost $200 and now we see it at $250 or $300, would we ourselves buy that item? And I think a lot of us would probably raise our eyebrows and say, hey, I'm going to take a pass. And we see that with customers. And so I think that the assumption that we're just going to all pass it through and everything will be great is definitely not a great one based upon what we're seeing in our actual sales data today, is that elasticity still applies and customers are still very cautious and probably even almost more so. We do see consumer sentiment right now is probably is driving to a more concerned state as folks are digesting the current economy and market environment. Super helpful overall. Wanted to just pause here and look at our board, see if we have questions or comments as well. Looks like I'm not seeing any there, Melissa. But yeah, curious, anything else you'd like to add? Any other summary points or topics?
No, I think just to remain agile, right, in the coming weeks and really for the next few years, because we're not, there's so much uncertainty in the market. Mm-hmm. So just take it one day at a time and figure out long-term strategies as well as working on near-term initiatives to try to do what's best for your business.
Yeah, that's valid. I think my biggest observance of the hundreds and hundreds of brand partners we work with is that those that are moving the fastest and they're getting together and getting actions done in hours and days, not weeks and months, are the ones that are winning, and they're keeping their share and they're getting sales moving. I think those of us that let bureaucracy or complacency or hope guide us are probably in a more risky state. I think from what Spreetail sees, we sell on 20 different marketplaces and many hundreds and thousands of products, is that I do believe the tariff changes are big enough that will drive companies out of business. There's without a doubt, companies will not make it through this. And so I think for any of us in our businesses to think that we can just avoid that by not moving fast, by being open, being partnership, having transparent conversations with our partners and taking an honest look at our assortment, at what we're doing, I think we're going to regret that. And so that would be my recommendation thought, is to move fast, be sharp, and you'll help navigate your competition and make sure that your end customers are getting a good product at a great price, which is what we're all here to do. So thank you so much, Melissa. It's awesome to have your expertise with us. And also any partners working with Spreetail, we would love for, if you want to reach out, get time with Melissa, get time with myself or our other leading merchants. We'd love to chat with you. Our goal is to be your partners. We're not pushing out unilateral changes or unilateral requests or threats or do this or else. We're here to be your partners and to work together through it. When the storm clouds are there, it's the time to band together and be creative. And that's what we're trying to do here. And so please reach out and we'll openly, put everything on the table and kind of figure out what the best plan forward is. So thank you so much, Melissa. Appreciate you. Have a good day.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.